Hi, Tiffany. It's really great to meet you. My name is Diem Nguyen. I'm the CEO of Xalud Therapeutics.
Wonderful. Well, I am so excited to have this opportunity to speak with you. So, we are at Bio International. And for those of you listening, you are probably familiar that AiArthritis is hugely invested in everything that leads to the right treatment at the right time for the right patient. Also, detection, diagnosis, making sure that the treatment we're on is the one that's best for us. And then there's something else that's really important in our diseases, and that is comorbidities. So it is very rare to find a patient with autoimmune or autoinflammatory of the immune system who just has one diagnosis. So I have axial spondyloarthritis, but I also deal with other comorbidities as well as other people. Now, osteoarthritis being one as we get older, but there neuropathy or different uveitis. Those are huge comorbidities. And when I saw a little your company and what you're working on and how it's zeroing in on being precise to those conditions, I said, this is somebody that we need to talk to. So our community is very intrigued and interested in learning what's happening in research and how that's going to potentially impact our own quality of life. So I thought you could tell us just a little bit about the company and the work you're doing.
Tiffany, thank you so much. I'm very excited to talk to you about this because I do think Xalud is targeting the treatment of a number of inflammatory diseases in a very unique way. And if you think about it, a lot of the medications that are available for osteoarthritis of the knee or uveitis or all these other chronic inflammatory, you usually have the options of steroids. You look at things that are masking the pain. You're looking at areas of blocking one single pathway. And the uniqueness about Xalud is that we're targeting a very important cytokine called interleukin 10. And if you know the spirit of inflammation, interleukin 10 is an upstream modulator of a number of different pro-inflammatory cytokines as well as anti-inflammatory mediators. So in a healthy body, you have a imbalance or you get injured and it triggers some type of event. And then in this event, what happens is you feel something, your pain is going up, you have pro-inflammatory cytokines upregulated, and it's telling your body time to slow down, time to get to some degree of improvement. The challenge is exactly what you described, Tiffany, that things are not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And so these pro-inflammatory cytokines are upregulated. Your body usually tries to counteract that with a downstream activity to reduce pro-inflammatory cytokines, but that's not happening in your body. And so then you get prolonged inflammation, you get chronification, and you get a whole number of these comorbidities, Tiffany, that you just talked about, in which it includes neuropathic pain, it includes dermatology challenges, it includes uveitis, it includes osteoarthritis of the knee. So our therapy is delivering a DNA that allows you to express interleukin 10, which helps encourage your body back to homeostasis. So in other words, we're not blocking pain, we're trying to reduce inflammation, which then drives all of these comorbidities that you're talking about that patients suffer from. And I think that's fundamentally different in how you're treating inflammation relative to the drugs that are out here today. And the way that I've just learned a little bit about what you're facing, they don't work. We need to be thinking about a revolution on how you treat inflammation.
So as an education moment too for the audience, and we have talked about this in other shows, the comorbidities that we're talking about, and you made a very good point that I wanted to just highlight because it's important to understand. If your disease is not controlled, the inflammation is not controlled, that's what leads to the comorbidities. And that's why as an organization, we fight so hard for early detection and early diagnosis first, because any kind of early intervention often leads to better outcomes and we wouldn't develop the comorbidities. But I gotta say, it's very hard to find a patient who doesn't have something else. And that's why this is extremely important work. Can you tell me a little bit about the mechanism of action, or how does this work? How does this therapy work for us?
So thank you for that. And I think that's the excitement that we have with interleukin 10 is the possibility that it can actually target a number of different disease areas not just one specifically, because IL-10 is so important. So how this medicine works is we have a single injection, and this injection has DNA, not unlike mRNA from a vaccine perspective. This DNA gets endocytosed into your body. Your body cells then go and actually use the DNA machinery to then make the protein of interest. And this protein of interest is interleukin 10. So from particularly in osteoarthritis of the knee, we have a phase 2B program right now with over 280 patients that have already enrolled and completed the trial. And what we've done is inject in the knee our plasmid. The plasmid gets engulfed by adjacent cells. The cells are then making interleukin 10, which then helps drive the reduction of pro-inflammatory cytokines, and you have a restoration of homeostasis from your body perspective, and patients are not only getting a benefit from the pain, they're also getting a benefit from their function as well too. And what we've seen with our product is it's actually, you're talking about 2 injections with a year's worth of benefit, which, as you know, can be quite transformational, because what you don't want to do is constantly have to take medicine all the time to feel better. And what we're feeling like is that this one, the duration of benefit is quite long, and therefore patients like you can live happy and productive lives.
Okay, so now all of the questions are starting to come to my head, because you've piqued my interest. Well, you piqued my interest before you sat down, which is why we're having the conversation. But the clinical trial, so you said 2B. So I mean, there's several more levels here. So for the audience to understand, this isn't something that's going to be available tomorrow, and they are in trials. So there's trials for osteoarthritis. I was looking at your website and I was seeing kind of like the phases. So the other ones that we were talking about, like the dermatology ones, those are earlier in the process yet. If a patient was like, I'm interested in getting involved in something like this, how would could they even get involved in your trials?
Maybe I can first give a little bit of overview of how drugs are developed. So the first aspect of it is you have this great science, and you first test to see if it's safe in animals to administer or to deliver the product. And then from the safety, then you say, okay, does it work? Is it doing the efficacy endpoints that you'd need it to go? Does it make you feel better at the end of the day? And so you do a number of preclinical studies associated with that. Then you get to the point of being first in human. And usually we call that a phase 1 or a phase 2A. And in particular there, it's not about efficacy. Is it just safe to administer in humans? And you look at primary endpoints of safety, and then the secondary endpoints is saying, is it doing what we think it's doing? If the answer is yes, then you move to phase 2Bs. And particularly in phase 2Bs, they can range in terms of the number of patients that are enrolled in the trial. Ours in particular was a pretty sizable phase 2B. We were close to 286 patients enrolled. And in there, what we looked at is safety, we looked at dosing, we looked at duration of benefit. And we're so grateful for patients that are willing to participate in clinical trials, because that's the only way we're going to be able to develop medicines to help a broader patient population. And so when people are interested in participating, the answer is emphatically yes. Look at companies' websites. There's always a number that you can call to say, how do I get our participating in these trials? And then we can get you to the closest clinical sites possible, if the patient has the right criteria associated with the clinical trial protocol. So particularly for Xalud, we have a phase 2B. Because of the results are so promising, we're well into targeted phase 3. Phase 3 trial means when you conclude that, you can actually file to get it actually approved by the regulatory bodies, which then can make it available to all patients in the U.S. So our osteoarthritis is probably a year, like in 2023, starting our phase 3. It'll be a large program, and then we'll probably hope, if everything goes well, and we're demonstrating the things that we're seeing in our phase 2B, commercialization and being accessible to all patients by 2026. In addition to osteoarthritis, we have subspecific joint syndrome, lower back pain. We are looking at neuropathic pain. We are looking at neurodegenerative diseases, devastating neurodegenerative diseases like ALS and MS. Preclinically, we have been able to show incredible results in terms of efficacy and survival benefits associated with our product. So it's not just about pain, it's actually about survival in some of these devastating diseases. And that we're targeting to be able to get into first in human in 2023 as well too. So I'm just always forever grateful for people that are supportive of driving our trials, because that's the only way we're going to be able to show if it benefits patients from a societal perspective. So thank you in advance.
Okay. So are you speaking in a session here at Bio? Okay. And that is tomorrow, correct? Could you tell us a little bit about what the role of that, or what the session is about and what your role is in it?
Sure. Thank you for asking. I actually am speaking in two panels, and I had one earlier today, and it was about how to make effective decisions in terms of your research pipeline. For tomorrow's session is very relevant, Tiffany, to some of the things you were talking about with personalized medicine, is this concept of what are the challenges the industry is facing as it relates to gene therapy. And I think first and foremost, it's really important to think about how the concept of drug development has evolved over the decades. So most patients know solid oral dose, which is your pills. They're chemical entities, they're pills you take, you swallow orals, and hopefully it makes you feel better. And then certainly over the course of the decades, biologics became very important in the last 2 decades. So those are proteins that usually you have infused in your body. And particularly for RA patients, it's been very meaningful therapies associated with that. We're now in the era of what I call nucleic acid delivery. And of course, everyone's heard of gene therapy. It sounds very daunting. Gene therapy seems like cyber, and they're always targeting some rare disease that is incredibly devastating. But over the pandemic, the world of gene therapy has evolved from not just only AAV viral gene therapy, but now you're talking about mRNA. And I think everybody knows what mRNA is now, thanks to the COVID, right? And so mRNA is another form of gene therapy. And Xalud is what we call DNA delivery. And so it's more akin to mRNA. It's non-viral, meaning you can dose multiple times and still have a continued safety profile that you benefit just like you see in possibly mRNA. So particularly for us, in this panel, we're going to talk about this continuum of gene therapy. We're going to talk about, I think, opportunities as well as challenges associated with the different types of delivery mechanisms. And honestly, for me, there's not one right or wrong. It's what you need as a patient to get the best type of therapy possible for your specific disease area. So for drug manufacturers and developers like myself and Xalud, I think we should all rise to the occasion because there's clearly such unmet need in a number of different indications. Specifically for ours, it's DNA delivery, high safety profile, very affordable from a manufacturing perspective. It really lends yourself to large chronic indications. And I think that's what makes us so excited about the fact that we're targeting, not like a few thousand patients. We're looking at the number of indications that we're going after. We're going after tens of millions. And I think this platform does a great job of addressing very large unmet needs.
Now, this is something that just came in my head, and if don't know the answer, wouldn't know it. That's okay too. But so myself and many other patients on current treatments, on current biologics, let's say, and I have spondyloarthritis, the biologic I'm on. I'm here because it's working well, right? But I do still have other issues with comorbidities. I have Behçet's disease on my record as well, severe canker sores and breakouts that happen in my mouth, and severe dry eye and eye inflammation, and get breakout and rashes. So a lot of things that are it's telling me that there's still activity, right? So how would a patient who is on an existing treatment, is this something that could be used in in conjunction, or is it instead, or do we not know?
I would say that we don't know that right now. I think that we need to get to some clinical experience. So, for the first part, with our product, specifically for osteoarthritis of the knee, our trial enabled patients to still be on their current medication. So, we were trying to mimic a real world situation like what you're describing, where you have a painful knee, but you also have other challenges that you need an NSAID for, you need Tylenol, you need something for. And so for these patients, we said, okay, don't change what you're doing because we know that you're experiencing so many other challenges. Just let's see how it works in addition. And what we found is these patients are still very well tolerated in terms of keeping with their current medications today, as well as injections of our product. We'd like to believe that as we get more experience with our product, that we'll be able to better understand the comorbidities or any of the contraindications associated with it. But today, we shouldn't have any reason to believe that it would be problematic for a patient like you.
And it also there are patients who are not like me, who just do not want to use biologics. They're very into a more natural approach. And this using genetics, and it does seem from a patient perspective to be, and I don't, natural is the right word, but it's just the idea of targeting your body and your response to things. And is it really along the lines different than an IL-17 or an IL-23 targeting biologic? Because you're targeting IL-10, right? So as a patient who's just reading the information, it's different. What you're doing is different. Could you just explain that? Because there are a lot of patients that they'll say, I won't do a biologic, but this might sound interesting to them, and it's still the IL. So just any clarity on that.
Yeah, sure. I will always say that if patients can feel better without medication, we should all live healthier lives, right? And so physical therapy, making sure you're eating the right types of food that are anti-inflammatory in nature will always be a preferred choice in terms of living productive and healthy lives. I love the concept of interleukin 10 because it's not one, the first part of it is it's an upstream modulator. So all of these anti-inflammatory medications you've heard of, TGF, NGFs, interleukin 10 works on top of that. So it doesn't just block NGFs, it actually blocks NGFs and TGFs and a number of other IL cytokines that you just described. So it has the opportunity to influence many biological pathways as opposed to just one. The second aspect of it, I think that's incredibly unique, is this fact that it's not blocking something. What it's trying to do is encourage your body to go back to homeostasis, meaning it's encouraging your body to resolve the inflammation, which is driving all these symptoms that you're facing. So in some regards, it's not an anesthetic, it is disease altering. And that to me is so transformational in how you think about treating chronic inflammation. I use this analogy, and it's not the perfect one, but is you're walking, you have a uneven step, you fall in the step, you get hurt, and you take some medicine to make you feel better. And yet you still go down those steps and you still fall and you still do these things and you're just taking medication to feel better. What we're trying to do is try to help you fix the steps so you don't have to take the other medication. And so that's a little bit of my layman's analogy. It's not the most perfect one, but it is one that it tries. What we're trying to do is actually get to the heart of what's driving the pain, not trying to mask the pain. Okay?
Yes. All right. Okay. All right. So I have a last question for you here. And this is something that there's a theme in our shows that we've been talking about. And that is that research and data is really what will drive access. So there's a barrier. And what would you suggest that patient advocacy groups, what can we do to sort of prepare for the time this product comes to market? There's a need or a desire for access, but there's a barrier. Like, how can we plan for that?
I think it's really important for patients to always be vocal with these advocacy groups you had, because there's many things that can be benefited from it. The first piece is you can learn. You can learn through these advocacy groups what's available to patients today. The second aspect is I think there's a mental and emotional support you can get from these groups. And because you're not alone in the whole concept of things. My perspective, and it's really important, is that advocacy groups should demand that other stakeholders, whether it be drug developers or regulatory bodies, think about a way to drive innovation. And I think right now, especially in the space we're in, there hasn't been a lot of innovation. So somewhere along the line, drug developers need to think differently. How do they design trials? And regulatory bodies have to be more accepting, because it's not an option not to have innovation. There's clearly a huge unmet need, and I think patients need to be vocal in expressing the demands. And I will say, especially given the opioid pandemic, like the issue with opioids is because there aren't other alternatives. And that's shame on society for that, right? We should be able to be better in rising up the occasion to be able to develop drugs differently as well as drive benefit.
Well, that was great. That's a great way to wrap it up. So I just wanted to thank you for your time. And I hope to talk to you again at some point, catch up, because this has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your energy as well, too. So thank you, Tiffany, for being an incredible advocate for all of these people. We need people like you.
Thank you so much.